What's up, you guys? I'm here to talk about Roth IRAs and why I think you should open one today. Now, I make videos like this every week about real estate, investing, personal finance, and a whole lot of other things. So if you like it, consider subscribing. Now let's get into it. So what is a Roth IRA? Well, a Roth IRA is simply an account that you could use to grow your contributions tax-free all the way until retirement, and you withdraw them tax-free. It's really an amazing tool for anybody looking to retire, which I'm sure is most people. For Roth IRAs, you pay taxes on the amount that you contribute today, and then it grows tax-free for a long time. Now, that contrasts to an IRA. An IRA is an individual retirement account, which is similar to the Roth IRA, but instead of paying taxes on it now, you actually pay taxes on it later. So every dollar you contribute to your IRA today, you can deduct from your taxes for that year, and then it grows over time, and you pay taxes on it when you withdraw it in the future. Both accounts are going to be great for most people. It really just depends on, do you think, is my tax burden going to be higher today than it will in the future? If so, then you should use a regular IRA account to contribute to. Now, if you think you're going to have a greater tax burden in the future, you want to use a Roth IRA. The reason is, in both scenarios, you're looking to pay as little in tax as possible. And with an IRA and a Roth IRA, you're able to do that depending on what you think your tax burden will be like in the future. Now, the reason why I would rather have a Roth IRA today, and the reason why I think you should get one as well, is for peace of mind. I would rather pay my taxes on my contributions today, with the idea that in the future, I wouldn't owe any money on the contributions or the growth on those contributions when I retire. That's a really, really nice thought to think about, especially when you think about the idea that taxes today are lower than they have been in quite some time. And I reckon by the time that I retire, due to government deficits and a whole host of other factors, we could probably see higher taxes, which means that if I already pay taxes on my contributions today and I withdraw them tax-free, it'll be worth even more than it would be normally for somebody contributing to a typical after-tax account. With that being said, if you're thinking about contributing to an IRA or a Roth IRA and you're not sure, don't waver and miss the deadline. You have only until the end of the tax filing to contribute for the previous year. So no matter if you pick a Roth IRA or a regular IRA, you will be just fine. You just need to contribute and let compound interest do its thing. The amazing thing about these accounts, whether it's an IRA or a Roth IRA, is that your money can grow for a very long time and not be subject to tax year over year over year. This lets compound interest, which Warren Buffett once said is one of the wonders of the world, to do its thing. If you contribute the normal amount every single year, about $6,000 for the 2019 tax year, then if you do that every year from the time you're in your 20s to the time you retire in your 60s, you will likely have over $1 million in your retirement account. This is an amazing thing. And getting back to the point of a Roth IRA, if you have $1 million in your retirement account by the time you retire, and withdrawing that money is tax-free, you can move that money into a broad-based index fund or a portfolio of bonds and withdraw $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 every single year tax-free. That's the annual salary of most people. That is a really nice thought and something that really keeps me going when I think I'd rather spend this money today. I think of that thought and I think, you know what, I'll just put it away in that Roth IRA and I'll be just fine when it's time to retire. So to summarize, the Roth IRA is great because you pay taxes now and you don't pay taxes later. An IRA is great because you could deduct from your income the contributions that you make today and withdraw later, but you have to pay taxes on it. Either account's going to be great and you need to open an account, whether it's an IRA or Roth IRA. I think you should do a Roth IRA and you need to do that today. The sooner you do it, the better. There's some amazing charts out there, which I'll put on the screen, that shows if you were to wait until you were 35 as opposed to starting when you're 25 to start contributing to your retirement account, you're going to be way, way behind the ball if you were to do that as opposed to start earlier. It's very important to start early and let compound interest do its thing. Now, I just want to clarify, and now this is a point a lot of people probably miss, but an IRA or Roth IRA is not an investment in itself. It's simply a mechanism by which you can put your money into it and then invest from there. So you still need to decide what to invest in. And this can be really confusing for a lot of people who don't want to spend the time or energy to learn or decide or decipher between all the different investments they can choose. Do I pick stocks? Do I pick bonds? Do I pick, gold? I mean, there's whole lot of things that you can be inundated with and get confused by if you don't have a guiding principle. The thing that I would tell most people is, number one, contribute to that Roth or that IRA. Number two, go online to somewhere like Vanguard or Fidelity and pick a broad-based index fund with low expense ratios, something that hopefully mimics the broad-based market, you know, the S&P 500, or my favorite from Vanguard, a fund called VTSAX. There is a lot of information out there. I'll link it below, and I hope you take a look, because that's really the thing that I'm invested in and which most people should be invested in, because it's a broad-based market. Now, let me get to VTSAX. That is the fund that you could select in your Roth IRA. So I have Vanguard, and that means I opened a Roth IRA on Vanguard. I went and I clicked through and I contributed my amount for 2019 into that Roth IRA. Once it was in Vanguard's hands, I can't touch it anymore until I retire. Now with Roth, you can withdraw certain things and there's certain exceptions to that, but by and large, you're not allowed to touch the money that you contribute. When I contributed to my Roth IRA, I put it in there, and then from there I had to make an investment selection. I chose, like I said before, VTSAX. That is a total stock market index fund. It's fantastic because what it does is allows me a little bit of exposure to every single business in that fund, which for all intents and purposes is the broader based stock market. So I'm getting a little piece of Apple, a little piece of Amazon, of Facebook, of Berkshire Hathaway, of Johnson & Johnson. I own a tiny little slice of every one of those businesses. The reason why this VTSAX is so important is because I can diversify. That's one of the key things you want to look for in investment. I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. If I do, and I were to put it all in, for example, Kodak in the late 80s, I would think, oh, this company is doing great. I'm going to do just fine when I retire. Lo and behold, digital cameras are invented, Kodak goes bankrupt. I don't want that scenario. I want to put my eggs in a bunch of different baskets. I don't want them to crack, because when I retire, I don't want to be banking on the fact that one company is going to get me there. VTSAX does that for you. It allows you exposure to all these other companies. Now, don't try to get clever and get individual stock picking. If you have the time and expertise and you want to risk that, that's for you. And you know, for most people, I'd recommend they stay away from that. Pick a broad-based index fund. The second reason why the index fund is so important, VTSAX or any broad-based index fund, is because you're going to pay very little in fees. For VTSAX, you're going to pay 4 basis points, which is 0.04% of the amount that you contributed every single year. That is nothing, because most of the time you're going to get dividends, which are about 2%, 3%, sometimes even more on the amount of money that you have invested in there. Dividends are simply checks that the companies write to you for being an owner of the company. That's all it is. And when you invest in VTSAX, you get tiny little checks from all the companies that you own. Those checks are going to be worth far more in your expense ratios, and frankly, it's the best investment option that most people have out there. There are other options out there, not with Vanguard, but with other companies, big and reputable like Fidelity, which have actually 0% on your index fund expense ratios. This is pretty great. You can buy the S&P 500, which is, as I said before, a broad-based grouping of companies. It's 500 different companies throughout mainly North America, which you get to own a little slice of. Those are the Apple, Amazon, Johnson & Johnson, Chevron, those sorts of companies. Either one of those are going to be great. I'll have some recommendations in the description on what I think that you should be invested in. But again, it comes back to just keeping it simple and starting now. You don't want to wait until it's too late. Let compound interest do its magic so that you could retire with $1 million in your retirement account. I'm going to make an entirely separate video which goes into detail in what it means to invest and what it means when you actually hold a stock and what you should really be looking for in a company. But for now, just settle on the idea that you're going to be buying a tiny slice in a large, large pie of all the different companies that are going to be working on your behalf. You're going to own a tiny slice of, you know, a whole lot of very smart companies that are going to be earning money over a long period of time. That's what you want when you're looking to retire. You don't want to take a ton of risk. You want to own the broad market. One other point I'd make about investing in a Roth IRA or an IRA and any number of those funds, you do not want to get too crazy. You do not want to get scared by the market, by CNBC and people saying, oh, this is the worst economic time ever. Oh, a recession is coming, or things are too good and sell early. You want to be able to buy and forget. Leave it alone and forget it until you retire. As long as you're in a broad-based index fund, you'll do just fine. If you were to sell at the bottom in 2009, 2010, you would have missed out on all of the tremendous gains that we've had since then. And frankly, no one in the world, no matter how smart, how much money they have any idea what the market is going to do tomorrow, the next day, the next week. They may have a kind of a guess, but that's all you have. Any number of things can happen. People are constantly inventing new companies, new widgets, new ways to make money that you can't even imagine, new ways to disrupt companies. I mean, 10 years ago, the iPhone was invented. It seems like it's been around forever, but that's how quickly the world can change. So don't get too scared. Don't sell things early. Don't get creative and cute and all this stuff. Just buy a broad-based index fund and set it and forget it and go on to your life and the things that you want to do. The more you transact, the worse you'll do. In fact, one of my favorite studies comes from Fidelity. They studied all of their account holders and determined which one of these people actually did the best, which one of these groups of people performed the best in their funds over a long period of time. What they found was pretty interesting. The best performing of the groups of people weren't people ages 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 50 and above, or retired people. It was dead people. Dead people actually did the best. People who died and weren't able to transact in their accounts actually did better than everyone else. The reason is they bought into their stocks, their broad-based index funds, and they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything at all. They let compound interest do its magic. They weren't inundated by CNBC or the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal telling everybody now is the best or now is the worst time, recession's coming, boom times are coming. They weren't inundated by those headlines. They just bought and let compound interest do its thing. And that's what you need to do. You need to invest like a dead person would. You need to buy and not do anything else. And when you retire, you are going to thank yourself for it. So that's all I got to say for today. If you like this video, comment below. Tell me what you'd like to learn about. Tell me where I missed some points and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.